Alright, thank you everyone for coming to tonight's IoT Bytes meetup. My name is set up and configured, so that way we can kind of skip ahead with that. I wasn't planning on covering setting up a Raspberry Pi as part of this. We did that presentation last month, so let's go ahead and let's get started. Assuming you already have the .NET 3.1 SDK downloaded and installed, you already have Visual Studio Code downloaded and installed. With the .NET SDK, one of the nice things that you can do is with PowerShell, you can just simply do once you get into your directory. So if I cd into sources, repos, and then I have Pi ASP demo. It's an empty directory, and we can do .NET new web app. Should be a little better. Okay. We'll see that we have Visual Studio Code. So now, if I flip over to code, you can see that we have this program.cs file. This is our entry point into our application. With program.cs, we have this main method that's the main entry point. This is literally just a console application, if you're familiar with C# console applications. And it's just calling this create host builder that returns an iHost builder. We will be making one modification in here, and this is just okay, come on. Okay, I am blanking on what exactly the term is that we should be using, so give me 2 seconds. Oh, okay. Configure web host defaults. Alright, we have this nice lambda expression to give us going here, and we're going to be using... Nope, wait, that's what's already there. Sorry. Configure Kestrel is what we want. Let's make this a little better real quick. And then next we will be setting up our listener. Anybody who's familiar with setting up new Actually, instead of doing it this way, let's do that way we don't have to worry about what port the Raspberry Pi is currently assigned, or what IP address we're currently assigned. It'll just listen on any of them. Alright, let's go ahead and clean this up just a tad. Alright, let's go ahead and save. Oops, wrong window. There we go. Let's go ahead and save, and then now let's go back over to PowerShell. Alright, and then over on PowerShell, I can do .NET build. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the chat. Alright, now that we have it built, we can do a publish. We can do .NET publish -R for runtime, Linux -ARM -O for output. I'm going to put this in a directory called PyDemo, and then -C for configuration, and we want the release configuration. And this right here, this is the secret sauce for the entire presentation tonight. The -R, Linux -ARM, we're telling it to create an executable, and I forgot a bit here, sorry. Let's go ahead and cancel. We need one more, -self-contained. There we go. Now between -R, Linux -ARM, that tells it to create a Linux executable, the --self-contained. We're telling it here to go ahead and contain the entirety of the framework that we're using, bundled with the executable, instead of relying on the framework being installed on the target machine. You will have noticed that I am using my Windows box to get everything set up ahead of time, and then once this has been published, we will be pushing this over to the Raspberry Pi via SFTP with an SSH connection on MOBA Xterm, which will be the next tool that I open up here. If we go ahead and switch over to MOBA Xterm, so over here on MOBA Xterm, let's open up a terminal. And I apologize if the text ends up being really small. I'm going to do SSH pi at 192.168.1.161. Like I said earlier, I have this pre-configured and ready to go for our demonstration tonight. Alright. I'm already logged into my Pi. I've created a directory here called dotnet root. It is actually already a populated directory, so what I'm going to do is actually depopulate this directory real quick. We're going to delete everything out of this directory, just to show that what we just did is what we're going to be using. Okay. Let me open a Windows File Explorer real quick. Alright, and we have our first question from the chat. Is there a Slack channel for this group or another place to post your code? We do have a Slack channel. It is austiniot.slack.com. Send an email to me at darren.swan@austiniot.org or to dave.brixius@austiniot.org, and we'll get you set up and into the Slack channel. I will be posting these instructions at a later date online, either via GitHub or my own personal blog once I get that established. So let me go ahead. I'm going to drag and drop these files right into MobaXterm, and you'll see that there's over 300 files that'll get copied. There's 363 of them total, which include a handful of files that are just simple web setup files, such as bootstrap.js and bootstrap.cs or CSS. Yeah, thank you, Dave, for answering that question in the chat. Here in just a moment, we'll see the files finish uploading. And this is going a lot faster this evening than I was actually expecting it to go. I was hoping there'd be more questions from the chat, but when all is said and done, we'll have just questions and see what happens. Thanks, Dave, for handling the chat questions. And with all of this, let's see, the load time here should be finished. So if I go to ls here, you'll see we have the .NET root. We can cd into .NET root, and you'll see there's our large number of files. We scroll down here to the P section, we'll see, yeah, here's our Pi ASP demo. Yep, right here. So let's scroll back down. Next we need to do a chmod. We need to make that executable. Chmod. And I'm going to take the lazy way out. I'm going to make it do the 777, and let's do Pi ASP demo. Alright. And now we can do / Pi ASP demo. And watch it run. Right, it says it's listening on port 5000. If I switch over to my browser now, I can go to http://192.168.1.161, port 5000, and voila! We have Pi ASP demo running on a Raspberry Pi. And it's, like, here's the home. We have the privacy page. Go back to the home page. And now let's make a small edit to this. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code, if I can actually click the correct button, there we go. Back to Visual Studio Code. We can go to this Pages. We have index.cshtml. And let's do a header level 2. Let's do this is running on a Raspberry Pi. Ta-da! We can save this. We can flip back over to PowerShell. We can publish it one more time. Alright, we have it nice and published again. Let's come over here to the terminal, or to MOBA Xterm again. MOBA. Alright. Let's see, actually, let's make this a little bigger. This is view, zoom some more. Where's this zoom here? No, there's not. Okay, let's just keep clicking zoom up here. There. That's a little bigger. Alright, let's go ahead and stop the application. And I'm going to go ahead and copy the new version in. And this is going to replace all 368 files. So we should be having all these files. We're up to, let's see, about 150 of them done so far. Once these are all said and done, I'll reload the page and we'll be able to see that we had made a change to that file and it's up and running on this Raspberry Pi. And just to note, I am running a Raspberry Pi 4. I do have the 4GB model, which is not necessarily important to all of this. You do have to remember, though, that you do have to be running a Pi 2B or newer. This won't run on the older Pis, and this will not run on a Pi 0. It does not have the correct ARM processor on it. But now, if I run Pi ASP demo again, and then we switch back over to the browser. And switch over to the browser. There we go. And then refresh the screen. This is running on a Raspberry Pi. And I managed to misspell raspberry. So there we have it. We've made a change to the site, and we have got the site up and running on the Raspberry Pi. Anybody have any questions or anything? I know there's a significant lag between what I'm saying and what the chat has, or what is currently live, that is. But I'll leave it open for the next 5 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes for questions, and then I think we'll adjourn this one pretty early. Only 20 minutes in. Or 22 minutes in, to be exact. So we have a question from Dave in the chat. What kind of applications can you build using C# on a Raspberry Pi? You can really build anything that you can build with the dotnet framework. Mostly for the Raspberry Pi applications that I have built have either been console applications that run on the command line, or I've done web applications that run right in the browser like this. I've also done Blazor applications, which is WebAssembly hosted in an ASP.NET application. So the only part of that that's really different is the fact that it's sending out the WebAssembly out to your browser to run in the browser. Meanwhile, here, we're still running the ASP.NET web application on the Raspberry Pi itself. Common utilities to do with the Raspberry Pi and C# would be really anything that you can do using a Python script, you can pretty much do using C# as well. There's libraries such as raspberry.io that make it easily accessible to the GPIO pins or the I2C pin interfaces, and all kinds of things like that. Any more questions or anything? I'm not certain if my audio is lagging behind just like the video is, but if it is, I apologize. Alrighty, well, we're coming up on the another question from the chat. Can you recommend some resources for getting up to speed on .NET? I've written C++ code and I'm very familiar with Linux. The best recommendation I have is just Microsoft's documentation on the Microsoft website. I believe it's .net.microsoft.com. Another good resource would be Pluralsight has a lot of good resources. Pact Publishing also has a lot of really good resources, both in video and text format. Pact Publishing does a lot of they do a lot of like PDF and online ebooks. There we go, that's the term I was looking for, ebooks. And you'll periodically see Pact Publishing show up in the Humble bundles from time to time, where you can download their content for a significant discount. But I think Safari Online is another really good resource in general, but these are all generic resources for a lot of different topics. They're not specific to .NET. The best one that's specific to .NET, I would suggest, would be the Microsoft's .NET documentation. So thank you, Russell, for that question. I forgot about Udemy. I apologize for that one. Alright, do we have any more questions? Thank you, Dave and Russell, for your questions so far. One thing that you can look forward to in an upcoming presentation, which let me switch back to my webcam real quick. One thing you can look forward to in an upcoming presentation is this right here, if I'm not dropping it. This is a JetBot. It's running off of an NVIDIA Jetson Nano, and it's actually essentially a self-driving little car. So in a future presentation, look forward to seeing stuff experimenting with this. So another question is, what are the benefits of using C# over Python or Node on a Pi? The biggest benefit is whatever you happen to be familiar with. There are very few things that one does that the other one doesn't do. Like, all three of them will run on a Windows platform, all three of them will run on the Raspberry Pi. For the Raspberry Pi specifically, you'll find a lot more documentation for Python than you will for C#. C# stuff doesn't usually have platform specifics attached to it. It's specific to the .NET framework. But the nice thing about running in C# is that for those of us who are familiar with C# and work in the Microsoft space consistently, then being able to use C# makes it a lot easier for us to get up and going instead of having to flip over to Python or flip over to Node for JavaScript or TypeScript and change languages just to run on a different platform. It's nice to be able to write one set of code and just change your compile flags to point it at a different platform. Python kind of has that same, but it's another big difference between Python, Node, and C# is that C# is essentially being actually compiled down to an executable that is operating on your machine. Meanwhile, Python and Node are both interpreted languages, so you have a little bit of overhead with the language where it needs to be processed by the system before it can actually even do what it's supposed to do. While C#, on the other hand, because it compiles down into nearly a binary, I believe, it allows you to execute a lot faster and be a little more efficient with what you're doing. Now, I have done a few benchmarks where I did the exact same task running in Node, running in Python, and running in C#, and honestly, I noticed no appreciable difference between the two. The processing difference was measured in milliseconds between them. So, alright. Any other questions or anything? Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to doing the demonstration with the Jetson Nano. I really hope to be able to do that one in person once all this social isolation stuff blows over. With a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, this code will actually run on it without modification. It's targeting the Linux ARM platform, which is I believe it's ARM 7 and newer. It will run on it just fine. So with this one, it's a Linux ARM platform. So any ARM computer, I can actually take this exact same executable and put it on my JetBot over here, and it will actually run there as well without any changes, because it's still an ARM-based processor. So, thank you for that question, Russell. Alright. If there aren't any other questions, I think I'm going to go ahead and end the stream for now. And if you guys have any further questions, you can email me at darren.swan@austiniot.org, or you can email Dave. He put his email address in the chat over there, dave.brixius@austiniot.org. Does C# offer anything that runs on Arduino? Unfortunately, it does not. The Arduinos are running an ARM Cortex-M0 processor, and they're not running a full-fledged ARM 7 processor, so I'm sure somebody somewhere will eventually create a cross-compiler to allow us to run C# on an Arduino, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. C++ kind of dominates that range at the moment. I can totally put documentation about the Jetson. I bought mine from Seed Studio, so I'll put a link to where you can buy it and where you can look at it online, and that way, once we get a chance to meet in person, we can all get together and have our Jetson Nanos play with each other. That would be fun. Alright. Well, thanks everyone. You all have a good night. Stay safe and wash your hands.